Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into an exercise that is absolutely fascinating, but, honestly a little bit chilling. We've curated 4 harrowing true travel stories, ranging from an isolated mountain cabin to a high-end luxury tropical resort. But we aren't just going to look at the physical events of what happened. We are going to analyze these encounters purely through the psychological lens of the victims themselves. We're going to dissect the actual anatomy of a travel nightmare, mapping out that precise descent from perfect, carefree relaxation into absolute, unadulterated terror. Things can happen out of your control. That's a direct quote from someone who survived a brutal, totally unprovoked attack on a moonlit beach in Key West. It's such a simple sentence, right? But it really serves as our emotional anchor for this entire analysis. Today, we're stripping away the physical locations, we're stripping away the specific attackers, and we're zeroing in entirely on the victim's internal descent into terror. What actually happens to the human mind when the world around you suddenly starts making sense? So I want you to ask yourself right now, when you leave home, how safe are you really? Just think about your last vacation. You packed your bags, locked your front door, headed out, basically assuming that because you paid for getaway, you magically purchased this protective bubble. But as you'll see from the data in these 4 accounts, that vulnerability, that's exactly what makes us targets in the first place. Part 1, the illusion of safety and how we strip away our own defenses. Okay, let's dive into this. Whenever we travel, we inherently lower our psychological guard. We leave behind our daily routines, our everyday hypervigilance, all in exchange for the promise of relaxation, maybe some romance, or exciting surprises. We just assume the universe knows we're on vacation. Take that Key West attack. The expectation was literal perfection. The victim had an engagement ring in his pocket. The moonlight was blindingly beautiful. But reality breached that bubble in the absolute most unsettling way. Suddenly, they found themselves surrounded by 4 strangers, wearing these bizarre, stoic smiles, standing uncomfortably close. The victim's brain was screaming that this was supposed to be a romantic moment, which made the intrusion of these deeply unsettling strangers almost impossible to process at first. And this false sense of security, it totally gets compounded by luxury. In our Costa Rica account, the victims were staying at an incredibly expensive 4 Seasons resort. You naturally think, hey, I've paid a premium, therefore I'm safe. But notice the stark contrast here. The expectation of secluded, hot tub luxury was completely shattered by the reality of a human stalker literally crouching in the jungle bushes nearby. Walled resorts and high price tags offer this completely false sense of security when a human threat is determined enough to cross that boundary. But sometimes, the environment itself strips away our defenses before the human threat even arrives. Consider our driver in Pennsylvania. He falls asleep at the wheel, crashes into a ditch, and wakes up surrounded by an endless, blinding wall of white fog. Before the terrifying locals even pull up to quote-unquote help him, he's thinking, I wanted to crawl under a rock. He is just utterly isolated, grieving his damaged car, completely vulnerable. His defenses were totally shattered before the real nightmare even began. Phase 2. Ignoring the red flags and the dangers of gaslighting ourselves. This brings us to a really common, actually universal human coping mechanism that popped up in all of the source material. When presented with clear, undeniable signs of danger, our brains will desperately try to maintain that cozy illusion of safety. In the story about the isolated cabin, the wife knew right away that something was off. She saw a shadow in the bedroom corner. The very next day, after taking a shower, she noticed her folded clothes had been strangely moved into a single row, and her socks were just completely missing. Her internal monologue here is incredibly revealing. She said, I felt like I was going crazy. Rather than accepting the horrifying reality that an intruder was creeping around inside the house with them, she actively tried to convince herself that her own memory was failing. Psychologists actually call this normalcy bias. It's our brain's stubborn refusal to accept that a disaster is actively happening. And what's truly fascinating here is the husband's reaction. In the middle of the night, they hear footsteps. He goes to check the house and finds a closet door wide open. His instinct? He rationalizes it. He literally tells himself and his wife that the door must have just magically opened on its own. Have you ever done that? Have you ever heard a bump in the night and totally convinced yourself it was just the wind or the house settling? Our desire for safety is so overwhelmingly strong that we will invent physics-defying logic just to avoid facing a real threat. Let's move to the Costa Rica timeline and see how this builds. Notice the slow, creeping escalation of red flags. Days 1 and 2, perfect relaxation. Night 3, they spot the crouching stalker in the bushes. Day 4, a man pretending to be an employee takes their photo and just vanishes. By midnight, there was a silhouette outside their patio screen, snapping pictures. The victim even described hearing a low, guttural human buzzing sound coming from the jungle earlier that day. But at each and every step, they tried to brush it off. They were trying so hard to save the vacation vibe until the escalation simply could not be ignored any longer. Which leads us to a really critical threshold in the anatomy of an attack. At what precise moment does pure survival instinct finally override our flawed human logic? When does that denial completely shatter? Phase 3, the fight or flight response, and the visceral breaking point. This is it. The visceral moment the victims finally realized they were in severe, immediate danger. Those polite rationalizations, they vanish. They are instantly replaced by split-second, raw, evolutionary reactions. Let's head back to the cabin for a second. The husband goes down into the dimly lit basement to prove to his terrified wife that the house is perfectly safe. He sees a figure standing in the corner wearing a red hat. His brain tries one last time to rationalize it. It's just a hat rack, it's a mannequin, and then the mannequin blinks. That is the breaking point. Logic evaporates. His immediate flight response kicks in. He grabs the bags, yells at his wife to start the car, and literally sprints past the open basement door. Over in Pennsylvania, the breaking point was a horrifying sequence of split-second decisions. The driver realizes the strange locals who offered to tow his car are actually boxing him in. Suddenly, the old woman yells, "Paul," and a younger man bursts from under a tarp in the truck bed wielding a knife. Following the chronological steps of his escape, Step 1, realize it's a trap. Step 2, he dodges the hidden knife by falling backward. Step 3, he sprints blindly into the dark, foggy woods. And Step 4, he hides. And honestly, the most chilling sensory detail from this entire source, the driver holding his breath in the dark forest while that old woman strolled nearby calling out for Sonny Boy, actively trying to lure him back out. Back on the beach in Key West, the breaking point hit the second those eerie, stoic smiles finally dropped. The victim noted that in the blink of an eye, the smiles turned into faces of pure anger. The two men slammed him into the sand, and one immediately reached into his unbuttoned red flannel. Quote, "I knew he was looking for a pocket knife." That sudden shift from creepy psychological intimidation to impending lethal violence just flipped a primal switch in the victim's brain. Completely outmatched and pinned down in the sand, the victim channeled pure fight or flight. He wildly kicked the ankle of one of the grinning women standing nearby. It was a totally desperate move, but it caused her to stumble, which created a split-second distraction. And that tiny window was all they needed. He grabbed his girlfriend's hand, and they sprinted for their lives back to the resort, their faces bleeding, ribs aching, escaping what was undoubtedly about to be a fatal encounter. Finally, Phase 4, the lingering aftermath, and a changed perspective. So, the crucial point is that surviving the physical threat absolutely doesn't mean the psychological journey is over, not even close. As this quote brilliantly illustrates, there is a massive long-term cost to these events. The Pennsylvania driver reflects, "That was the last time I've driven anywhere far at night alone." These aren't just scary campfire stories. They leave permanent scarring. They completely rewrite a victim's behavior, fundamentally altering their sense of independence and their baseline trust in the world around them. Across all 4 of these source stories, we see these permanent psychological shifts. I mean, the couple from the cabin absolutely refuses to rent isolated homes anymore, preferring crowded hotels where they aren't the sole targets. The driver refuses to take the night roads. The couple in Key West, even as they were packing their car to flee the island, found themselves constantly looking over their shoulders, forever haunted by overly friendly smiles from strangers. Their worldview has fundamentally shifted to one of permanent, exhausting vigilance. We've explored the illusion of safety, the very real danger of normalcy bias, and the sheer power of the breaking point. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. The anatomy of a victim often begins long before the attack actually happens. It begins the exact moment we decide to ignore the warning signs. So, if instinct is truly our only real defense in a chaotic world, are you actually listening when yours speaks to you?